If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. You know, I was we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because look, childcare is childcare.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
And as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into...
I would dare any of you to listen to his answer on childcare and tell me what the hell he was talking about. It was one of the more incoherent things I've ever heard.
He is, and I cannot stress this enough, a butcher of the English language. A mumbling, bumbling mess hell-bent on maiming metaphors, alienating alliteration, wounding the very words that he alleges to weave together like a seasoned orator, when to the contrary, he has as much a handle on his own vernacular as he does the Bible.
Childcare, I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about.
In today's episode of Tell Me You Didn't Do the Reading, Donald Trump spoke to the Economic Club of New York in an alleged effort to outline his economic agenda if he is to be elected in November. He was asked several questions from a crowd of economists, business leaders, and journalists during the back and forth.
And instead of attacking industries of the future, we will embrace them, including making America the world capital for crypto and Bitcoin.
Please clap.
And I want to highlight one answer in particular, right? It was on childcare. You know, the very thing his vice presidential pick suggested should just be offered free by grandparents or aunties as a solution. Sorry, did I say grandparent? I meant postmenopausal female if we're talking J.D. Vance language.
What can we do about lowering the cost of daycare? Hayden, obviously a working family, and it's very hard for working families to get by. How will we lower the cost of daycare?
You know, such an important question, Charlie. And I think one of the things that we can do is make it easier for family models to choose, or for families to choose whatever model they want, right? So one of the ways that you might be able to relieve a little bit of pressure on people who are paying so much for daycare is make it so that you know, maybe like grandma or grandpa wants to help out a little bit more. Or maybe there's an aunt or uncle that wants to help out a little bit more. If that happens, you relieve some of the pressure on all the resources that we're spending in daycare.
But his cult leader's response wasn't much better. In fact, it was a catastrophe. Donald Trump was asked if he would commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable, and if so, what specific legislation he would advance. Rather than just play you the abomination that was his answer, I'm sure many of you, like myself, are sick to the backburners of listening to this man ramble on. So instead, I will read word for word the unedited transcript of his response. Ready? Question, please.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down, and I was somebody. He had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on the issue. It's a very important issue, but I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that because look, childcare is, couldn't you know, there's something, you have to have it in this country, you have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, taxing foreign nations at the levels they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. Sorry, it comes as a habit. It's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we are talking about, including childcare. That's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within fairly short period of time, coupled with reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all the other things that are going on in our country, because I have to stay with childcare. I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're gonna be talking in trillions of dollars, and as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people, but we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation, so we'll take care of it. Thank you. Very good question. Thank you.
Make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it. Thank you.
People applauded this. You applauded this.
But today was also about Donald Trump's economic speech, and we watched a lot of it. And I would dare any of you to listen to his answer on childcare and tell me what the hell he was talking about. It was one of the more incoherent things I've ever heard. He thinks tariffs are going to pay for everything. We know that they're a tax on the consumer. But this really highlights a big problem that everyone is saying, well, Trump is so transparent and Trump's out there and that's all that matters. What matters is the content of what he's saying. And none of it is explainable. This issue, which is a big priority for people, obviously a central plank of what's going on in the Harris campaign, he doesn't have an answer besides tariffs. And J.D. Vance yesterday was talking about just have grandma and grandpa do more, that's some sort of solution for people. He's going to have energy prices, drill baby drill, even though we're producing more oil than we ever have before, leading the world, more tax cuts for the rich, and tariffs are the only way that we're going to be paying for it.
Undoubtedly, they're the same people that have the unmitigated gall to claim that Kamala Harris doesn't offer enough specifics on her policy position.
Thanks. Whose plan are you liking, and what really speaks to you in your state? What will work with voters there?
So again, when we talk about the voters, we're talking about that 8 to 10% of swing voters, right? Those are the ones that are still up for play and probably will be through October. It's not the economy, it's cost of living. And those voters are going to be swayed by who is the change agent, right? Who is the individual? Is it Kamala Harris or is it Donald Trump that'll be an agent of change to make my life more affordable? It's not about the number of jobs that created. People have jobs. They just want things to be affordable again. And that's it. And between now and November 5th, the rent comes due, right? On the 1st, the credit card bills keep coming in. The energy bills the electric bills keep coming in. There's a lot of costs American families are going to have. And that's the anxiety, right? Anxiety is what drives someone to go to the voting booth and ask for change. And Americans still have a lot of anxiety, especially with an impending recession, which is very real. And there's no question Donald Trump is always going to be more trusted as someone that's been on the front lines in business, can actually speak to details, through all the personality challenges that a lot of us know and accept that he has. It's results that people want. Only new results are going to bring the change to kind of lower the temperature in their families and give them more economic freedom. And that's what it's about, not the global economy.
Never mind specifics, mate. What about completing sentences? What about train of thought? You want to talk about mental acuity, as many were anchored to over the last 5 months regarding Joe Biden. Joe Biden sounds like a prime Al Pacino sending Miami Sharks out to battle compared to this.
When we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying.
Please, spare me your views on specifics.
Go ahead. Yeah, totally. We have excellent counters of all political persuasions, but we also do have nonpartisan groups like the Penn Wharton group that put out their budget model and said that Donald Trump would take the deficit 5.8 trillion she'd only add 1.2 trillion. You had Goldman Sachs that came out today and they said that the GDP will significantly decrease under Donald Trump and it'll continue to increase under Kamala Harris. Look at what Moody's has said, also nonpartisan, talking about how if you're going to round up a bunch of immigrants and you're going to have tariffs, which he keeps saying isn't a tax on consumers, and that's what the national tax is that people are talking about. If you're going to implement tariffs, guess what's going to happen? The economy is going to suffer for it. That's not what Kamala Harris is proposing in the American people.
I'm going to steal 30 seconds for Brian.
When the only thing specific about that word salad was how specific the image is in my head of every single mediocre dude I've come across in classes over the years when asked to talk about something they didn't read.
To the extent that he said things that were coherent, and some of it was just sort of words randomly chosen out of a dictionary, yeah. I think. To the extent that he said anything that was coherent, it was kind of what we would expect. It was a promise of more income tax cuts, higher tariffs, which, by the way, tariffs are taxes. And if you look at the distribution of what he has proposed, most people would see more increase in taxes through tariffs than they would see tax cuts through income tax cuts. So some of
Doesn't
that,
offset.
yeah, it more than gets wiped out. So you heard tariffs, taxes, you heard this government efficiency commission, which I think at best will probably do nothing. We've had lots of blue ribbon panels before. At worst, might help Donald Trump identify more enemies whom he can weaponize state power against. And then kind of more of the same deregulation, which he tried to do in the first term.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.